The baseball bat was inches from Marcus Washington's head when Officer Jake Sullivan made a split-second decision that would change everything. 3 gang members had cornered the 68-year-old black man on the back of the city bus, thinking he was just another helpless victim. They had no idea they were attacking a retired police captain with 32 years of experience. And they definitely didn't know that sitting just 2 rows ahead was his former white patrol partner, who was about to show them what police brotherhood really means. If you believe in the unbreakable bond between police officers, hit that subscribe button and tell us in the comments where you're watching from. It was 9:47 p.m. on a cold Tuesday evening in Detroit when Marcus Washington stepped onto bus route 47. The 68-year-old retired police captain moved slowly, his arthritis making each step deliberate and careful. His salt and pepper beard was neatly trimmed, and despite his civilian clothes, he carried himself with the unmistakable bearing of a man who had spent 3 decades commanding respect. Marcus had just finished his weekly visit to the community center where he volunteered, teaching young kids about conflict resolution and respect for authority. His granddaughter Keisha's birthday party was tomorrow, and he was carrying a small wrapped present in his worn leather bag, a police badge necklace he'd had specially made for her. The bus was nearly empty, except for a few late shift workers. Heading home, Marcus took his usual seat in the back, preferring to keep his back to the wall and his eyes on the exits. Old habits from 32 years of police work never really fade. 2 rows ahead, Jake Sullivan sat quietly reading a paperback novel. At 52, the white detective still had the sharp eyes and alert posture of an active officer. Though he'd been retired for 3 years after taking a bullet in the shoulder during a drug bust, his blonde hair was graying at the temples, but his blue eyes remained as keen as ever. Neither man had noticed the other when they boarded. It had been 2 years since they'd last spoken. Despite living in the same city, retirement had a way of making former partners drift apart, even ones who had saved each other's lives multiple times. But their reunion was about to be more dramatic than either could have imagined. The next stop, 3 young men boarded the bus. Damon "D Money" Rodriguez, 19, was the leader, a skinny Latino with face tattoos and a reputation for robbing elderly passengers on public transit. His crew consisted of Tyrell Jackson, 20, a tall black youth with angry eyes and a Louisville Slugger baseball bat hidden under his long coat, and Kevin K. Dog Murphy, 18, a nervous white kid desperate to prove himself to the older gang members. They scanned the bus with predatory eyes, looking for easy targets. The few remaining passengers, a tired nurse, a grocery store clerk, an elderly woman with a walker, all avoided eye contact. But their gaze settled on Marcus, sitting alone in the back. "Look at Grandpa back there," Damon whispered to his crew. "Probably got his social security check on him." What they saw was an elderly black man, seemingly defenseless and isolated. What they didn't see was 32 years of street experience, tactical training, and a body that, despite arthritis, had maintained muscle memory from thousands of hours of combat practice. As the bus pulled away from the stop, the 3 young men slowly made their way toward the back, their intentions clear to anyone who knew how to read the signs. Marcus noticed them coming before they'd taken 3 steps. His hand instinctively moved to where his service weapon used to be, finding only empty space. In retirement, he'd gotten out of the habit of carrying concealed, something he was beginning to regret. "Evening, old man," Damon said with a cruel smile, as he slid into the seat across from Marcus. "Nice bag you got there. Mind if we take a look?" Tyrell positioned himself in the aisle, blocking any escape route, while Kevin nervously watched the front of the bus to make sure the driver wasn't paying attention. Marcus kept his voice calm and steady. "I don't have anything of value, son. Just some personal items." "Oh, we'll be the judge of that," Tyrell said, pulling the baseball bat from under his coat just enough for Marcus to see it. "See, we know old folks like you always carry cash. Don't trust banks and all that." The racial undertone wasn't subtle, and it hit Marcus like a physical blow. After 32 years of wearing the badge, fighting crime in these very neighborhoods, he was being profiled as just another elderly black victim. But what happened next would show these young criminals exactly who they were dealing with. 2 rows ahead, Jake Sullivan's trained ears picked up the change in conversation. He'd been a detective long enough to recognize the cadence of a mugging in progress. Without turning around, he used the reflection in the bus window to assess the situation. His blood ran cold when he recognized the victim, Marcus Washington. His partner for 15 years. The man who had pulled him from a burning patrol car in 2003. The captain who had recommended him for detective and had been best man at his wedding. The friend he'd lost touch with after retirement drove them apart. Jake's hand moved slowly to his ankle holster, where he still carried his backup weapon despite being retired. Some habits were too ingrained to break. I'm going to ask you one more time, Grandpa, Damon was saying, his voice getting more aggressive. Empty that bag, or my friend here is going to redecorate this bus with your skull. Marcus looked directly at the young man, his dark eyes holding steady. Son, you're making a mistake you're going to regret. The only mistake, Tyrell said, raising the baseball bat, is you thinking you got a choice in this. Actually, came a calm voice from 2 rows ahead. I think you boys are the ones making the mistake. Jake Sullivan stood slowly, turning to face the back of the bus. His hand rested casually near his hip, a stance that Marcus recognized immediately. Jake? Marcus said, surprise and relief flooding his voice. Hey partner, Jake replied with a slight smile. Been a while. The 3 gang members looked confused. This wasn't how robberies were supposed to go. Victims weren't supposed to know each other, and they definitely weren't supposed to look calm about the situation. Sit down, old man, Damon snapped at Jake. This ain't your business. Jake tilted his head slightly, a gesture Marcus remembered from 100 crime scenes. It meant Jake was calculating angles, assessing threats, and preparing for action. Here's the thing, Jake said conversationally, as if he were discussing the weather. That gentleman you're threatening? He's not just any old man. That's Captain Marcus Washington, Detroit PD, retired. 32 years on the force. Solved over 200 homicide cases. Trained half the current force in hand-to-hand combat. The gang members exchanged uncertain glances, but Damon tried to maintain his bravado. I don't care if he's the police commissioner. He's just an old man now. And me? Jake continued, his voice taking on a harder edge. I'm Detective Jake Sullivan, also retired. 15 years as his partner. We worked the worst neighborhoods in the city, took down drug cartels, murderers, armed robbers. He paused, letting that sink in. Kids like you. What happened next was caught on the bus security camera, and the footage would later be shown. In every police academy in the country. Marcus stood slowly, his movements suddenly more fluid despite his arthritis. The helpless elderly man facade dropped away, replaced by the bearing of a career law enforcement officer. You boys have about 10 seconds to apologize and walk away, Marcus said, his voice carrying the authority of 3 decades of command. Otherwise, my partner and I are going to give you a very painful lesson in respect. Tyrell, still holding the baseball bat, let out a nervous laugh. 2 old cops think they can take 3 of us? This ain't the movies, Grandpa. Marcus and Jake exchanged a look of silent communication honed by years of partnership. In that instant, they were no longer 2 retired men approaching 70 and 52 respectively. They were once again the team that had cleared crack houses, arrested armed suspects, and watched each other's backs through countless dangerous situations. Your move, boys, Jake said quietly. Tyrell made the first move, swinging the baseball bat in a wide arc toward Marcus's head. But Marcus wasn't there anymore. Despite his age, muscle memory kicked in as he ducked low and stepped inside the swing, grabbing Tyrell's wrist with both hands and using the young man's momentum against him. In one fluid motion, Marcus twisted Tyrell's arm behind his back and slammed him face first into the bus window. The baseball bat clattered to the floor. Simultaneously, Jake moved on Damon, who was reaching into his jacket for what looked like a knife. Jake's police training was evident as he grabbed Damon's arm, spun him around, and applied a chokehold. That would have made any academy instructor proud. Kevin, seeing his 2 older friends subdued in a matter of seconds, turned to run toward the front of the bus, but Marcus was already moving, his long legs covering the distance quickly. Despite his arthritis, he tackled Kevin from behind, both men tumbling into the seats. The entire confrontation lasted less than 30 seconds. Ray Hook 4. But the real shock was yet to come. As Jake tied Damon's hands behind his back, he always carried restraints. Another old habit. Marcus was checking Kevin for weapons and injuries. The professionalism was evident. These weren't 2 angry vigilantes getting revenge. These were trained law enforcement officers following protocol. Even in retirement. Everyone okay back here? Called the bus driver, who had finally noticed the commotion. Everything's under control, Jake called back. Call 911 and request police backup to our location. Tyrell, still dazed from hitting the window, looked up at Marcus with a mixture of fear and confusion. Who are you, really? Marcus helped the young man sit up properly, checking his head for serious injury. Like my partner said, I'm Captain Marcus Washington, Detroit PD, retired. 32 years protecting and serving this city. But you're a Tyrell, started to say. Black. Marcus finished. Son, there are black police officers. Good ones. Been plenty of us serving our communities for decades. Your problem isn't my race, it's your assumption that an elderly black man couldn't possibly be someone who commanded respect and authority. As they waited for backup to arrive, Jake sat down next to Marcus, both men breathing slightly harder than they used to after physical confrontations. Just like old times, Jake said with a grin. Speak for yourself, Marcus replied, rubbing his arthritic knuckles. I'm definitely feeling my age. You move pretty good for an old man. You too, partner. The word partner hung in the air between them, carrying the weight of 15 years of shared experiences, mutual respect, and genuine friendship that had transcended racial barriers. Long before it was fashionable to talk about such things, Damon, still secured with zipped eyes, looked at the two men with confusion. I don't get it. You're black, he's white. Cops are supposed to be racist. Marcus and Jake exchanged a look before Marcus answered. Son, real police work isn't about black and white. It's about right and wrong. It's about protecting people who can't protect themselves. My partner here pulled me out of a burning car in 2003. I took a bullet meant for him in 2007. When you've been through that together, skin color becomes pretty irrelevant. But the most important lesson was still coming. Jake nodded. We worked the toughest neighborhoods in Detroit for 15 years. Black neighborhoods, white neighborhoods, Hispanic neighborhoods. You know what we learned? Crime doesn't have a color, and neither does justice. There are good people and bad people in every community. But the news always shows. Kevin started to protest. The news shows what gets ratings, Marcus interrupted. Conflict sells. But what you don't see are the thousands of police officers of all colors working together every day to keep communities safe. Black cops, white cops, Hispanic cops, Asian cops were all just cops. The bus had pulled over to the curb, and through the windows, they could see the flashing lights of approaching police cars. Here's what's going to happen, Jake explained to the three young men. We're going to tell the responding officers exactly what occurred. You'll be arrested for attempted armed robbery and assault. But because none of us were seriously injured, and because this is your first offense, yes, I already ran your faces through my mental database, you'll probably get a chance to plea bargain to a lesser charge. Why would you help us? Damon asked suspiciously. Marcus leaned forward. Because 32 years of police work taught me that sometimes young people make stupid decisions that don't have to define their entire lives. You tried to rob us because you saw an easy target. But what you actually found were two men who dedicated their careers to helping their community. The responding officers were a mixed unit, Officer Rosa Martinez, a 28-year-old Latina, and Officer David Chen, a 31-year-old Asian American. Both recognized Marcus immediately. Captain Washington, Officer Martinez said with obvious respect. Are you injured, sir? I'm fine, Rosa. How's your father doing with his physical therapy? The young officer smiled. Much better. Thanks to the department insurance you helped him get approved. As the three suspects were led away in handcuffs, Tyrell turned back to Marcus. Captain Washington, I'm sorry. I didn't know. You shouldn't need to know who someone is to treat them with respect, Marcus replied gently. But apology accepted, son. Jake was giving his statement to Officer Chen, who had been one of his trainees years earlier. Detective Sullivan, tss. Good to see you. I heard about the shoulder injury. How are you doing? Good days and bad days, David. But apparently I can still handle myself when needed. After the paperwork was completed and the suspects were transported, Marcus and Jake found themselves alone on the bus with the driver, who was waiting for clearance to continue his route. You know, Jake said, we make a pretty good team for a couple of old guys. Speak for yourself, Marcus replied. I'm not old, I'm experienced. They both laughed, the tension of the evening finally breaking. Marcus, Jake said, his tone becoming more serious. I'm sorry we lost touch after retirement. I should have called. We both should have done a lot of things, Marcus replied. But maybe this happened for a reason. You still live over on Oakwood? Jake asked. Same house for 25 years. You moved to a condo after the divorce, but still in the neighborhood. There was a comfortable silence as both men processed the evening's events and the unexpected reunion. "You know what I was thinking during that whole confrontation?" Marcus said. "What's that?" "How much I missed having backup I could trust without question." Jake nodded. "Retirement's been lonely. My kids live with their mother in California. No wife, no partner to watch my back. Some days I wonder what the hell I'm supposed to do with the rest of my life." Keisha, that's my granddaughter, she's turning 7 tomorrow. "Birthday party at Chuck E. Cheese at PM. Why don't you come by?" Jake looked surprised. "You sure? I don't want to impose on family time." "Jake, you are family. We bled together. We saved lives together. We made it through 15 years of the worst the city could throw at us. That makes you family." But the real surprise was what Jake said next. "Actually, I've got something to tell you," Jake said. "I've been thinking about volunteering somewhere. Maybe doing some community outreach. Getting back to the kind of police work that actually makes a difference." Marcus's eyes lit up. "The community center where I volunteer is always looking for people. We work with at-risk kids, teach them conflict resolution, show them there are alternatives to the street life." "You think they'd want an old white cop?" "I think they'd want a good cop who cares about making a difference. Color's got nothing to do with it." Jake extended his hand. "Partners again?" Marcus shook it firmly. "Partners again." As the bus finally resumed its route, Marcus and Jake sat together, talking about their families, their retirement struggles, and their shared hope for the community they'd served for so long. "You know what those kids tonight reminded me of?" Marcus said. "What's that?" "Myself at 19, angry, looking for someone to blame for everything wrong in my life. If the right person hadn't come along and shown me a different path." "What changed for you?" "An old white police sergeant named Bill Murphy found me breaking into cars when I was 17. Instead of arresting me, he made me clean squad cars every weekend for 6 months. Talk to me about the police academy. I thought serving something bigger than myself." Jake smiled. "Murphy trained me too, about 10 years before you. Toughest son of a bitch I ever met, but fair to everyone. He used to say, police work isn't about us versus them. It's about all of us working together to build something better." "Think those kids tonight learned anything?" Marcus considered the question. "Maybe. Sometimes it takes a shock to wake people up. Seeing two men, their grandparents, age handle them like that. Learning that their assumptions about age and race were wrong. Maybe it planted a seed." "I've got an idea," Jake said as they approached Marcus's stop. "I'm listening. What if we started a program specifically for kids like the ones tonight? Young people who are on the wrong path, but haven't crossed the line into serious crime yet." Marcus nodded slowly. "Like a intervention program?" "Exactly. Use our combined experience, black cop, white cop, different backgrounds, but shared values to show them that there are people who care about their futures. The community center has space for new programs, and I know judges who would be willing to offer community service instead of jail time for first-time offenders." Jake's excitement was growing. "We could teach them about respect, about seeing past racial stereotypes, about channeling anger into something productive. Call it the Second Chance program," Marcus suggested. "I like it. When do we start?" "How about Monday morning? Come by the center around AM. I'll introduce you to the director." As Marcus prepared to get off the bus, he turned to Jake one more time. "You know, 5 years ago, when I retired, I thought my days of making a real difference were over. And now, I think maybe our most important work is just beginning." Jake stood to shake his hand. "Goodbye. See you Monday, partner. See you Monday." As Marcus walked toward his house, carrying the birthday present for his granddaughter, he reflected on the evening's events. 3 young men had tried to victimize him based on their assumptions about his age and race. Instead, they'd encountered 2 experienced police officers whose partnership had transcended those very barriers decades ago. More importantly, that chance encounter had reunited 2 friends and created the foundation for something that could help prevent other young people from making the same mistakes. The Second Chance program had grown beyond Marcus and Jake's wildest expectations. 23 young first-time offenders had completed the 8-week course. Tyrell Jackson, the young man with the baseball bat, had been their first graduate and was now enrolled in community college studying criminal justice. Kevin Murphy had reconnected with his estranged father and was working full-time at an auto repair shop. Even Damon Rodriguez, after serving 90 days in county jail, had joined the program and was learning construction skills through a partnership with a local trade union. You know what I learned? Tyrell said during his graduation speech to the latest group of program participants. I thought Captain Washington was just another old black man I could intimidate. I thought Detective Sullivan was just another racist white cop. I was wrong on both counts. Age doesn't equal weakness, and a badge doesn't determine character. These two men taught me that respect has nothing to do with skin color and everything to do with actions. Marcus and Jake stood at the back of the room, watching their first graduate address the new class. Think Murphy would be proud? Jake whispered. I think Murphy would say, we're finally learning what he tried to teach us 30 years ago. Marcus replied, what's that? That real police work happens one person at a time, one relationship at a time, one chance at a time. As the ceremony concluded, Marcus checked his watch. Keisha had a soccer game at p.m., and Jake had promised to be there. In 6 months, the former detective had become Uncle Jake to Marcus's granddaughter and a fixture at family gatherings. Walking out of the community center together, two men, who had started the evening as strangers on a bus, had not only rediscovered their friendship, but had found their true calling in retirement. Same time tomorrow? Jake asked. Wouldn't miss it, partner. The badge might have been retired, but the Brotherhood was eternal. If you believe that police officers of all colors can work together to make our communities safer, hit that subscribe button and share this story. And in the comments, tell us about a time when someone's assumptions about you were completely wrong. We read every comment and reply to as many as we can.